What's up, everyone? Good afternoon. This is probably going to be the final Russell Wilson reaction video that I make. We do have to get back to our regularly scheduled content, but obviously, a trade like this requires a lot of analysis and thoughts and work in general. I think this is going to be the last one. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to try to get back to tracking free agency, tracking the upcoming draft. Obviously, a lot of the things that I've said about free agency and the draft are kind of out the window now because our team is drastically changed. We can no longer safely say that we're trying to win a title right now. We can no longer say that we're set up to win when we get a couple of the right pieces in. Um, Everything's kind of changed on that front unless you replace Wilson with another franchise level quarterback. And there really aren't a whole lot of options out there right now. If you look in free agency for quarterbacks, it's ugly. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota are probably the three best guys. There's Tyler Huntley, but I'm not. I don't know. I'm just not into that. I feel like he's going to be way overvalued right now. So, if you want to restoke the fires of contention in Seattle in 2022, if you don't want to do that rebuild that I talked about in my last video, if you want to actually find a way to try to compete for that title now, basically just flip over into a new era immediately, this is really the only way to do it. And there's been some buzz around this, so I got to take some time to talk about it. Richard Sherman did his podcast yesterday, and one of the things he said was that he thinks that Carroll and Schneider traded Wilson because they're setting up to make a move for Deshaun Watson. Now, Sherman, he's no insider. I know that. He definitely doesn't have inside info. I still don't buy the Stephon Gilmore stuff that he was talking about. That still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But that being said, this does make some degree of sense. Deshaun Watson, very rare you have a young franchise quarterback like this available for any reason. And you could definitely look at the Deshaun Watson situation as like an opportunity to go from a 33-year-old franchise quarterback to I think he's 26-year-old franchise quarterback who's at this point probably better than the 33-year-old anyway. And by the way, he would be a little bit cheaper as well. So let's break this down. So what would you have to give up to get? Well, okay, the first thing we should say is this Friday, the Deshaun Watson legal case is going to come to some resolution, and it is seemingly believed that Watson is going to be cleared to play football, and he's going to be cleared of guilt. Now, I don't get the impression that he's innocent of what he's been accused of, but I haven't followed the case super closely, so I'm not going to comment to that too much. I will say, though, that if he did do these things and he's getting off because there's not enough evidence, but you still feel like he did it, then, I mean, that can't be good karma, right? To trade for a guy just because you think he can help you on the football field. So everybody's going to have to make their own decisions on whether or not they would endorse a move like getting Deshaun Watson, which, I mean, it's a difficult situation for sure. We are in an innocent until proven guilty country, but I can't shake the feeling that he probably did do the things that he is accused of and is going to ultimately avoid any sort of penalty for that because there's not enough evidence. And I don't know if I'm terribly excited to have a guy who has done what Watson has been accused of on my team, but pulling myself away from that conversation for a second because we can go all day on that stuff, not getting too deep into that. If he does get cleared to where you can feel comfortable trading for him, then what are you going to have to give up? At this point, Watson hasn't played football in a year. There's a little bit of a dark cloud hanging over him. He's made it known that he doesn't want to play for Houston anymore. Honestly, you could probably take the draft capital you got from the Wilson trade, flip it to Houston, and that would probably be enough. 2 firsts, 2 seconds. I don't think Houston at this point could expect to get much more, especially because Watson could decline a trade to any team he doesn't want to go to if you tried to send him to like the Giants or something. I don't think he would approve of that. I don't know if he would approve of going to Seattle, honestly, but I think it's more likely than some other teams like Washington. We already know Wilson didn't want to go there, so Watson might be in a similar boat. So if you can pull off that trade, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, then you're basically saying we flipped Wilson for Watson and we got a couple of good players out of it as well. That's really smart GM work if you can actually pull that off. Now, granted, you are taking on a guy who hasn't played football in a year. You are taking on a guy with a little bit of legal dark clouds following him around. But you are getting a player who I think is probably better than Wilson at this moment, and you are actually getting him for a slightly cheaper rate for the moment at least. So, if I'm understanding Watson's contract properly, if you traded for him, you would only be on the hook for his base salary, which is substantial because his bonus was actually pretty small. If you look here, he signed a $156 million deal that only had a $27 million signing bonus. So there's not a whole lot of signing bonus that Houston's on the hook for, but you're still looking at a discount from where Wilson's rate is going to be. In 2022, I think the only thing you would be on hook for is $35 million, and then 2023 you would be on the hook for 20 plus 17, so $37 million. And at that point, you have an out. Watson might want a new deal at this point, but if not, then you have 2024 where you're only going to be on the hook for $32 million. So that is incredibly good given how good Watson has played at various points in his career. He has played like an MVP, and it is less than you would have had to pay Wilson over that same time because, as we all already know, Wilson's going to want Mahomes' money when his contract comes up, and he was going to be due like, 39 against the cap this year. So in many ways, you're getting younger, better, and cheaper, and you're getting guys like Noah Fant and Shelby Harris thrown in. So if you could flip those draft assets for Watson, then this goes from a mixed offseason to a huge W offseason. And it's still a lot of money. I know this team isn't necessarily totally comfortable with paying a quarterback a lot of money, but they've shown a willingness to do it before. And at the end of the day, that's what it takes if you want that quarterback. It's either this or you're retooling for at least, I would say, 1 year, probably 2. And Watson, I don't need to sell you guys on how good this guy is. He did incredible work in Houston before he fell under legal problems. Requested a trade out of there because Bill O'Brien is a blithering idiot. Made 3 straight Pro Bowls. Last season he threw for over 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on a 4-win team. He has made a couple of playoff games. He's won a playoff game in, I think, 2019. And this is a guy who he's going to be good for a while, I think. I think that you could maybe get Watson and you could count on him to be the guy for another 7 years. Kind of like you could ride him until you get to the point where maybe you get to where you stopped riding Wilson. You get to that 33, 34-year-old range. But that's a problem for future you. That's not a problem for current you. That's a long way down the line. So, look, I have mixed thoughts on this Wilson trade. But if you want to do something to immediately get me on board and actually get me excited about all this, this is what you do. Let me know what you guys think about the Watson trade potential. I don't know how likely it is. Sherman's almost talking about like he can almost guarantee it, which, he's not an insider, but sometimes he knows what's up, I guess. So let me know what you think. Go Hawks.